Nick Touran is a nuclear reactor physicist and engineering manager at TerraPower, LLC in Bellevue, where he's worked on advanced reactor design since 2009. He got his Ph.D. in nuclear engineering from the University of from the University of Michigan after discovering the field during a search for an impactful climate change-related career. He is also the founder, editor, and system administrator of the public education website whatisnuclear.com, which gets roughly 2,000 unique hits per day from curious people and apparently some bots as well. He's married to a resident physician at the University of Washington and is a mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Puget Sound. So let's go ahead and give it up for Nick Touran.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm pretty excited for this evening. I'm just going to kick it off with a brief 10-minute history of how humans and energy have interacted for all of history and how we're going to be able to interact in the future. So to get started, I think we have to talk a little bit about what is energy. I think you all kind of have heard that it's the capacity for doing work. That's a little bit too abstract for me, so I tried some other definitions, like the antithesis of the heat death of the universe. Does that work better? That didn't work too well for me either. But really, I mean, without energy, nothing would move, nothing would have any temperature, it would be horrible. But the working definition for tonight is really going to be this last one, which is a replacement for the labor of human beings. That's not an all-inclusive definition of energy, but that's, humans are inherently lazy, and when we find some energy that we can have do stuff for us, great, we can use it, and that's generally good, right? That's quality of life. So just to make that concrete, I have a couple examples. You can imagine construction with human energy is hard, boring. But today, using energy, you can build South Lake Union by flicking your wrist on this tower crane, and it's just, there you go, buildings pop up everywhere, thanks to energy. Farming, how many of you grow all of your food for you and your family year-round? We got a little bit over there. Not many of us. Because of energy. We used to all do that, and now we have a few people riding around in combines that provide food, more food than has ever been created, because we're riding along with energy. Yay, energy. Laundry. You could spend all day doing this, or you could just throw it in here. If you could get it to fold the laundry, that'd be even better. Figuring, the first human computers can be outpaced by this $30 Raspberry Pi a couple million times over. Again, thanks to energy. How about travel? You want to go to Seattle from St. Louis? That's 6 months on the Oregon Trail, and you're all going to get dysentery. Or you could hop a quick trip to D.C. for lunch. Mount Rainier there. Thanks, Alaska Airlines. So anyway, you can really see heating. You want to chop wood or press a button. Water, huge deal, and that still is happening in the world today. And all sorts of other things. Energy really helps us do an incredible amount of things that give us our quality of life. And indeed, if you plot energy usage per capita as a function of quality of life, it looks like this. This is the Human Development Index, which is a rough correlation with quality of life. It's hard to quantify. And this is how much electricity use per capita these different countries use. You can see United States up here, and you can see China and India and Pakistan down here. They want to come up here. More energy is replacing their labor, and so they'd like to use more energy and get better quality of life. Great. No problem, right? You all know where this is going. So what fuels have we used to replace human labor throughout history? Well, in the United States, it looks kind of like this. We started with just water wheels and fire and humans and animals, and that worked great for a long time. And then, thank goodness, in the 1800s, coal came along. And I know what you're thinking, thank goodness. But actually, people were totally deforesting all of North America and Europe to make charcoal to smelt iron. And the forests were in severe danger of being totally wiped out to get charcoal. It takes a lot of wood to make charcoal. And so when coal and coke came along, that saved the forests of Europe. Kind of a tough audience for liking coal. More on that in a second. And then oil came in, and we all got automobiles and replaced our horses with oil, and the natural gas came on and started heating our homes, and now it's actually producing a huge amount of our electricity. And then in the 50s, you can see nuclear came on, and down here, this little green guy is wind and solar with their rapid increase very recently. So that's what we've used so far. And this is just the United States. The rest of the world looks pretty much like this. Okay? So, and a little bit more on how awesome fossil fuels are. Sorry. It really, I mean, it's easy to hate on them now, and there's reason to, but it's good to sort of step back and realize that without fossil fuels, you wouldn't have any of this stuff. You wouldn't have the quality of life that we have. 86% of the world is powered by fossil fuels. It's given us a lot of good. All the metals, railroads, global health, moon landing, internet, Chihuly. That stuff runs on, that's a propane torch, I believe. If you want to, this is sort of, I don't really recommend this book, but there's a whole book about how great fossil fuels have been because, you know, when you're heating a winter home with fossil fuels, you're changing a dangerous cold climate that would kill you if you didn't have heating into a safe climate. It's kind of a crazy idea, but anyway, you can read more if you really want to hear about that. So anyway, energy is good even if it comes from fossil fuel. But there's a problem. Fossil fuels produce greenhouse gas, and we now know that this is super dangerous, and there's climate change, and I think everybody in this room probably agrees that there's climate change. And the big gray chunk here is the fraction of world greenhouse gas that's produced because of fossil fuel, making energy, okay? This green one here is agriculture, so that's a big chunk. That's the cow parts and stuff. But you can see that this massive chunk of it is just from energy. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on now for today. So anyway, greenhouse gas problem. So how do we get high quality of life without greenhouse gases? Simple question, right? And here's a simple answer. There are low carbon energy sources, and I'm sorry that you probably can't read this at the bottom. This is in order. This is the grams of CO2 equivalent produced per kilowatt hour of electricity generated. This is from the IPCC, you know, the UN Organization of Climate Scientists. So you can believe it. Coal is no good. Biomass with co-firing, no good. Natural gas, no good, but a little bit better. Biomass dedicated, twice as good. And so I'd say you could probably draw the line right about there where solar photovoltaic comes in. That's pretty low carbon. That's legit. And then you have geothermal, concentrated solar, hydro, tidal, nuclear, and wind coming in for the most, or the least carbon intensive energy sources per kilowatt hour. Go nuclear. No one? One thing to note here is this sort of error bar on hydropower, which is super interesting. And it turns out that people have known about this, but it's getting more studied. It's not very well known, but if you have a very large reservoir, particularly in a tropic area, you get a huge amount of biogenic methane from that reservoir. And in some cases, this is real, in some cases that reservoir will produce more greenhouse gas than a coal plant for the same amount of power. It blew my mind, but I looked into it and it's actually true. I can give you references. It's super interesting. So anyway, but most hydro plants are fine. They're really low. If you just put a turbine in a river and don't have a big reservoir, that's great. Some big reservoirs are okay for certain reasons. It depends how deep it is or shallow or how new it is. The point is that it's very nuanced. So if you just want to build a bunch of hydro, make sure you check it out on a case-by-case basis, because this is really important. Because hydro is a big effect, or a big component of a lot of people's clean energy solution. Anyway, so these are our options. What do you guys want to do? I already know. You want wind and you want solar. They are extraordinarily popular with like 90% acceptance rate. They have tons of political support. There is wide tax credits. Everybody loves them and nobody doesn't love them. It's like incredible. You don't like offshore drilling. You don't like nuclear power plants. You don't like fracking and you don't like coal mining. I would poll you, but I think this is pretty representative. And this is great. The tax credits for these renewables, solar and wind, have been totally successful. The prices of generating from these sources has gone down astoundingly. It's been, and that's exactly what the tax credits are supposed to do. So it's actually been awesome, and the wind and solar is ramping up as expected. So that's great news. Here's what's expected to happen. So this is world energy consumption, a projection out to 2040. Now, one thing about projections, is that they're all wrong, But this is one from our Energy Information Administration, and it shows that renewables are going up at a really respectable rate. Natural gas is going up right with them. Coal and oil are holding steady and going up a little bit. Nuclear holds steady. Not acceptable. This doesn't decarbonize at all. So if this business as usual plan, which is what it looks like we're doing, is going to happen, we haven't succeeded in decarbonizing at all. So we need pretty dramatic changes to the current business as usual worldwide to do any better. Intermittency in wind and solar is actually a serious challenge. And this is where I get controversial, sorry. Wind and solar are on less than 30% of the time. It's dark sometimes and it's not windy sometimes. Like if you go outside right now, it's both of those things. In California, when the sun goes down, 13 gigawatts of natural gas has to fire up in 3 hours. That's a big challenge, and it has limits. Oh, you can just put batteries in there. Elon Musk is doing batteries. Yes, you can. It is not impossible. It is a challenge, though. Imagine a football field 6 meters high. That's like 18 feet. Those lithium-ion batteries are going to cost you $4 billion, and you have to rebuild them every 20 years. That's for a single power plant. You need about 600 of those in the United States to get through one night. What if there are 2 cloudy nights in a row? Or, worse, what if there's seasonal intermittency, which there absolutely is? The sun is a factor of 4 less intense in January than it is in July. You can't store your energy in batteries from July and bring it out in the winter. What if you have multiple cloudy days in a row? Yeah, you could build a battery bank that big, but it would be extraordinarily large and it would have a footprint way bigger than the problem you're trying to solve. So anyway, it's a challenge. It can be done. There are things that can help about it. You can do pumped hydro, where you actually take the excess energy during the day and pump water up into the dam, into the reservoir. Remember that error bar, though, and then let it come back down at night. That's an okay option, but you have to be careful with it because of what I mentioned earlier. So anyway, quick plug for my favorite energy source, nuclear power. So I'm a nuclear engineer, as you may have heard. I got into it because I thought its extreme energy density could help with climate change. You can get all of your energy for your entire life in one soda can, and that makes one soda can of waste. It's not nice waste, but it's a soda can of waste. James Hansen, the climate pioneer, is very pro-nuclear and has published a paper with NASA that says the nukes have prevented 2 million lives net. If you take all the deaths from accidents and all the lives saved by displacing air pollution deaths, it has saved 2 million lives, and it's definitely offset 65 billion tons of carbon dioxide. It's 24/7, so not intermittent, and it produces, right now, 60% of the carbon-free electricity in this country. So it's our climate champion. Go nuclear! Come on, guys. It's a known tech. We can expand it. You can't expand hydro very well, but we can build a lot of nukes. There is a legitimate problem with cost. Westinghouse just went bankrupt because of botched builds in the South. So the industry better figure out how to build them cheap if it wants to actually be relevant. But we know it can be cheap because South Korea right now is building them cheap. And in the 70s, France they electrified their whole grid with nukes, and it was cheap. And the way both of those people did it is by standardizing. They chose a design, and they built it again and again and again without changing it. And if you do that, you can make it cheap. Plus, there's a bunch of advanced reactors like the stuff Bill Gates is paying me and some other people in the audience to work on that have really awesome capabilities. So anyway, if you want to discuss that later, we'll do it in the Q&A. And last point is that if you think we can just reduce the amount of energy we're using, maybe we can. But there's stuff like Bitcoin coming online. This is a pretty modern example. You've heard of this. Bitcoin, right now, the network could power 3 million homes. That's how much electricity Bitcoin is using. All it's doing, when you mine Bitcoin, you actually take these huge warehouses of computers and you solve stupid math problems, like hard math problems that only a computer can solve, and that gives you a Bitcoin. And there's currently 3 million homes of this electricity going on. It's kind of nuts. So anyway, you just have to be careful. This kind of thing can really affect our climate future. If we're increasing energy like this, we better have a lot of very clean energy, or else we're going to be in trouble. And so the way I see it, we need everything on the right-hand side of my clean energy graph. Everything we got, we need it as fast as we can. And that's humans and energy. Thank you. And if you're a real wonk, you want to book on this, you can read this and it'll tell you everything, more than you ever wanted to know on this particular topic. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nick. Let's give it up for Nick one more time. Thank you.